This talk is, again, kind of about obstacles to practice and dealing with them, and basically obstacles that have come up for me in my practice. Um, and to start it out, I wanted to use a koan. Um, I really appreciate the koans. I really like the koans just because there's so many great stories in koans, and so many great characters. And when I think that these koans, people have been sitting with them for hundreds of years, and people have reached enlightenment on some of them. I mean, they're kind of like priceless antiques, really. And it's a great treasure, I think, to have those. And they give us such a great sort of picture of that period of Zen. Anyway, so I was trying to find a koan, and I guess I kind of got one that I think I can start with here. This is case 51 in the Blue Cliff Record. It's called Going Back Inside with Lowered Head. So I'll read it. The case. When Seppo was living in a hut, two monks came to pay respects. Seeing them coming, Seppo pushed open the door of the hut, popped out, and said, "What is it?" A monk also said, "What is it?" Seppo hung his head and went back inside. The monk later went to Ganto. Ganto asked, "Where'd you come from?" The monk said, "South of the range." Ganto said, "Did you ever go see Seppo?" The monk said, "Yes." Ganto said, "What did he have to say?" The monk related the foregoing story. Ganto said, "What did he have to say?" The monk said, "He said nothing. He hung his head and went back inside." Ganto said, too bad I didn't tell him the last word. Had I told him, no one could do anything to Seppo." At the end of the summer, the monk brought up the story again and asked for more help. Ganto said, "Why didn't you ask sooner?" The monk said, "I didn't dare be casual." Ganto said, "Though Seppo is born in the same lineage as me, he does not die in the same lineage as me. If you want to know the last word, just this is it." So it's an interesting story, but what's really going on here? Seppo was a very great Zen master. He appears in the Blue Cliff Record 4 times. He had 56 Dharma heirs, including Uman, one of the best of all time. His teaching lineage in China went for over 3 centuries. So he's not just, a minor teacher or something, or someone that would be intimidated by a monk or feel that way, But in this koan, he sure looks like he's intimidated. He steps out to address the monks, maybe offer him a Dharma challenge. And when one of the monks throws it back at him, he just hangs his head and goes back inside. That's not really what I think of Zen masters as doing. I think of Zen masters as being able to deal with anything, whatever comes up. I remember a story I read a long time ago about another Zen master who he got in some kind of conflict with a general, and the general threatened him and pulled out his sword and said, "I could cut off your head right now." And the Zen master just stuck out his neck and said, "Do you know I could let you?" And he was totally fearless in the face of death. And the general sheathed his sword and walked away. But Seppo retreats from a single phrase, a phrase that came from his own lips. Hangs his head, goes inside. Now, was he offended? Did he feel like he was defeated? Did he fail? Of course, it's a koan, so maybe there's more to it than that. But what I wanted to bring up was, who's this monk anyway? If he's a monk who's dedicated his life to searching for the truth, and he's on a pilgrimage to see a great Zen master, you'd think the last thing he would ever want to do is be disrespectful. It says they went to pay their respects. Was it some kind of a Dharma challenge? And he defeated Seppo just by repeating back what Seppo said to him. How could he do that? And who was he? In all the koans, the monks are just monks. They never have names. They're just a monk. They're anonymous, and that's too bad in a way, because their questions, their mistakes, and their interactions with the usually the Zen masters provide all the great teachings and stuff that we have. So I decided I was going to break with tradition a little bit and give this monk a name. And the name I gave him was the Mean Monk of Despair. The Mean Monk of Despair. I don't really think I have to introduce this monk to anyone. I think most of us probably are all too well acquainted with him. I know I am. He's discouragement, self-doubt, self-criticism, anxiety, depression. Pops up everywhere in Zen practice, and he pops up everywhere in life too. It can be a pretty scary fellow. When you can't pass a koan, he's there. When you bow at the wrong time, he's there. Someone looks at you funny, he's there. When your shoulders and back, your knees hurt, he's there. Pass gas in the Zendo and you hope no one notices, he's there. You daydream during Zazen, he's there. When you're sleepy or you're bored, he's there. You feel discouraged, like giving up, like you want to quit, he's there. In fact, he's always there. The Mean Monk of Despair has a lot of power over our lives, but he almost never gets any credit. We tend to give credit for success, not for failure. Maybe that's too bad. Failure is a valid part of life too. So to remedy that, I hope you don't mind, but I wrote a little poem, a sonnet about the Mean Monk of Despair. Someone once told me my poetry was similar to Emily Dickinson's because we both used English, and that was the only similarity. But I decided to take that as a compliment. All right, here's my poem. The mean monk of despair is lurking everywhere. Under the light of noon or in the evening's gloom, he's waiting. Before you start to sit, he'll ask, what's the point of it? Staring at the floor will just turn you to a bore, nothing more. The mean monk of despair says you have dirty underwear. Your breath smells like stale cat food. Your greasy hair looks glued to your forehead. He'll try to catch your eye, tell you not to even try. All you can do is fail. There's no chance you'll prevail. So give it up. The mean monk of despair likes to whisper in your ear. You're nothing but a fraud, doing something really odd to feel important. And when you look around, he makes faces seem to frown. You're not one of them. You know you'll never win. So just go home. But the mean monk of despair's secret is he isn't really there. He doesn't want you to know he isn't even a shadow. He's just imagined. So as a Buddha, touch the earth, of which you're part, which gave you birth. Honor the faith it has in you. You were born to see this journey through. So do. All right, well, that's where me and Emily part ways. But what I was trying to get at was that for me, in my practice over the years, I think one of the biggest stumbling blocks I had was just, and also with some of the other people I talk with too, was just some of this sense of self-doubt, discouragement, self-criticism, a sense that somehow I'm not good enough, that I can't do this, that I'll fail. Especially, the first several years when I started sitting and stuff, I would just sometimes just go through really deep periods of discouragement. I'd go down to the Zen center and I would just feel like, like I'm not good like these people. I smell bad. My knees hurt. I can't concentrate for more than 5 seconds. Roshi just frowned at me, and I would just feel like really, I don't know what the word is, but depressed, lost. And that was very hard to do that, I felt like like I was failing, like I was just failing. And, everyone likes success, likes to feel like they're successful. And doing something and feeling like you're successful at it is a big motivator to keep doing it. That's like, evolutionary because, if we do something, I mean, we have to keep our bodies alive, so we better be successful about the things we do for that. If you go berry picking in the winter when there are no berries and you're fine with that, you're going to be pretty hungry pretty quick. Um, both my sons did karate all through their school years because their first grade teacher was like a fifth or sixth degree black belt, and she'd just lure those kids into her class. And I thought they just had such a great way to motivate those kids. They start out, they're a white belt, you don't know anything, and then you learn a couple of their katas or techniques, and you get a yellow belt, and then you get an orange belt, and then you get, an orange belt with a stripe or whatever. But you keep moving up and up and up, and the kids always have in front of them an achievable goal to strive for, and also they have um, a symbol of what they've got achieved so far that they wear around their waist. Their different belt colors. And so it works great. And it's a good economic system too for the teachers anyway, because every time they get a new belt, they have to take a test and someone's got to pay for that. So in Zazen, we do have milestones in Zazen for sure in our Zen practice, but it's not quite like that. It's not nearly as clear cut. How do you strive to attain what you already are? How do you strive to be what you already are? How do you advance towards where you are? You can't. But if you can't strive towards something, then how do you know if you're even doing it? What is the goal exactly? It's not like Tennessee Ernie Ford, loaning 16 tons of number 9 coal. You can count every little car. Zen practice is much more harder to define than that. There aren't too many mileposts in our Zen practice. And in fact, a lot of the practice is letting go of mileposts and learning to go beyond them. I don't know, a few weeks ago, I was sitting in Rapid City with our group there, and it just really hit me all of a sudden. I thought, Zen is just, it just felt wonderful. I thought it's such a lighthearted practice, such a invigorating, lighthearted practice because we're just trying to let go of things that limit us, things that hold us down. And yet, what could be easier than that or more freeing than that? And at the same time, it's really a hard practice too, because we find out that those very things that limit us, we're very attached to them. If we have no limits, how do we define ourselves? Do we even exist? I mean, those are the essential questions of Zen. It's kind of a scary place to get to sometimes. And that's where the practice wants to push us. So, what do you do when the mean monk of despair shows up at your hut? And he will show up from time to time, maybe even very frequently. When he does, how do you deal with him? For myself, I thought about that. I thought about that a lot. I thought, why did I keep coming back to Zen practice? Because at first it definitely seemed very difficult to me, very, very difficult. And there's a few things I think that really helped. And the first one was, and I think the most important one was, this practice takes a lot of personal motivation. You can't use anybody else's motivation to do this. It's really got to come from you and from your own life. If you're a grouch, then you have to start out doing grouchy zazen. You can't pretend to be someone else. It's really got to come from you. And I think you have to be really clear to yourself about why you're doing this. What do you want? What's your goal? And I think you got to, at least for myself, articulate that and then remember that, keep thinking about that. Remember, why are you here? And that answer will change over time, but it's very important to know that because that's a big motivator, at least it was for me. So when I was writing this talk, I thought, all right, why am I doing this? I've been doing this now over 20 years. Why? Because sometimes it's still hard. And I thought, I think the way I would describe it now is I want to be at peace with my own life. I want to be at peace with my own life. And, sometimes I'm not. So that gives me a big motivation to keep sitting, to keep practicing until I feel like I really am at peace with my own life. I think Zazen is the best way to get there, you know. Um, and then another thing is I think you can have some faith in the circumstances that brought you here. You know, have faith in the great earth. There's hundreds of millions of people in the United States, and most of them have no clue what Zazen is at all. Um, you know, it's out there, but it's, you know, few people know about it really. And, you know, you do. And not only do you know about it, but you reacted to it and you came to a place to sit. It might be more than just mere coincidence. You know, there might be something deeper there. And I think, you know, you can have some faith in that. Another thing that's been helpful to me over the years really is using the power of habit. And that's really, I think, very powerful, you know. In Zen, you know, they often say we're trapped by our habit-ridden consciousness. Realization itself is not yet enlightenment because we still have that habit-ridden consciousness to deal with. And, you know, an awful lot of the practice is really trying to deal with that, trying to purify or clarify that. You know, if you've tried to change a bad habit, you know how stubborn they are. But the fact that they are so stubborn, so strong, means there's a lot of power there. There's a lot of strength in habit, and we can use that power. You know, for myself, you know, in Rapid City, people sometimes, if they ask for any advice, the thing I usually say is, you know, find a time that works to sit, and then sit that time every day, whether you want to or not. You know, don't wait till you feel like it, because you probably never feel like it. Find a time and sit, and do it every day till it's a habit, till you don't even have to think about it, because then it's easy. It's less than easy. It's just something you do, you know, and then it will carry you along. For myself, a lot of people like to sit early in the morning. Usually first thing in the morning, I'm really busy thinking about what I'm going to be doing at work. So it doesn't work for me, but after work is a really good time. So usually when I come home, first thing I do, I just go upstairs and I sit. If Judy and I are working together, she'll go down, take a shower, and I go sit. I don't even think about it. I just do it. That just makes it very, very easy. So I think we can make habit into a strength, you know, as well as sometimes a flaw. And then the last thing is really to pace yourself for years, you know, for decades, for lifetimes, for however long this practice goes, you know. That means to be patient with yourself. Sometimes it's appropriate to throw yourself into this as hard as you can. Other times you need to just back off a little bit and maybe just enjoy the practice. It can be very enjoyable. Sometimes you have to carry your practice. Sometimes you can let it carry you. But you have to kind of stay tuned to your own seasons and figure out, you know, when is the time to really push hard, you know. Of course, now I always like to talk about trees. So about 30 years ago, Judy was doing we were working on a timber cruise here in the hills, and my wife, Judy, just one of her random sample trees, she drilled this pine tree, a ponderosa pine. It was like turned out to be over 700 years old. And we were just amazed at that, because up till then, we'd never seen a tree close to that age in the hills. Most of them lived, you know, the mature trees in the hills are about 250, maybe 300. You hardly ever see one older than that. But this one was more than twice that age. So we were really amazed, and we sent the core sample to the tree ring lab in Tucson, Arizona, because they use it to reconstruct climate history. And they now that tree is on record. It's the 5th oldest ponderosa pine on record, and it's about 760 years old right now. So after she found that tree, I got really interested in old trees, and I thought, well, if there's one that old, there's probably 1,000-year-old one, and that just seemed like a cool thing. I wanted to find 1,000-year-old pine tree, so I went out and drilled trees for like a couple of years. I went looking for old pine trees. I never really found one older than hers. At first, I started drilling these big, enormous trees, and it turned out those aren't really the old ones. So I went back and I looked at hers, and hers is really a lot smaller than average. It's kind of contorted, and it's growing on a really miserable growing site where you wouldn't think anything would live very long at all. It's really dry, you know, very rocky. So then I started looking for sites like that and drill little trees. And that is where the old ones are. The really old ones are, they're trees that have been subjected to adversity for most of their life. And they grow extremely slowly. Um, in fact, at the tree ring lab, they use an electron microscope to count the rings, the annual rings, because a lot of times the growth ring will just be one cell layer thick. And then some years they don't even grow at all. If it rains, they'll grow. If it doesn't rain, they just wait. They'll wait. These are very patient trees. And they're not economically valuable, but they're very beautiful. They have a lot of character. They really have a lot of character, kind of Zen trees. And when I was looking at this thing, it kind of reminded me of like Seppo. I think Seppo was kind of known, at least when he was a young student, as being like a little bit slow, not like a fireball at first anyway, even though he was a great Zen master. Dogen Zenji died when he was 53. Seppo didn't even start teaching till he was 50. We've all heard of Joshu, didn't start teaching till he was 80. At the bio that I read about Seppo, it said, see if I written down here, it said, the superior vessel takes a long time to complete. A long time to complete. So that means have patience with yourself. Have patience with your practice. Fruit ripens after a long summer. So do you think, did the mean monk of despair defeat Seppo? Or did Seppo defeat the mean monk of despair? Or is that even the point? Tell me. I want to know. Anyway, let's not hurry. Let's not worry. Let's just enjoy this practice we have together while we have it. Thank you.